Let's roll.
Let's do it. Great to meet you. Well, thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So let's begin our journey with this. One of the biggest flashpoints in our timeline, our life, has been this COVID thing. 6 years
Yep.
ago, it changed so much. How did you get through that COVID era, and how has it influenced your work and life today?
Um, I was very fortunate. Um, I live at home, work at home with my wife. So I was one of those people who, for COVID, wasn't a really tough time, right? You had the companionship, the all those kind of things. Actually, the other part of COVID is I had COVID probably in the first week that COVID was announced. I actually got it in China. Came home, got really, really sick, and then they announced COVID. So I think the my wife got it, and in a week we were both fine. So I think the fear of COVID wasn't something we had to cope with, right? Like, is this we're gonna lose our family, all those kind of things. I knew that it was fine. My body could handle it, right? So it was a very different experience. I think it taught me though that focus time is so important.
Yeah.
um, when you're kind of starting to work all day, every day, because the meetings just keep rolling because everybody's just on Zoom, you need to take time to actually to think, to have perspective of those kind of things. So it just was a real reminder for me in all the things that kind of got me in my career to where I am today. Kind of go back to the basics, right? This is, you know, evaluate where you are, what life's about, even in your job, like what are you trying to achieve? Look at the big picture and then go for it, right?
Yeah. So before we get into Backward Brilliance,
Yeah.
or as we kind of get into this model, I want to get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. And to do
Yes,
that, I'm going to put you in front of 12-year-olds at career day. You're in a school, and the kid in the back of the room wants to know what you do for a living. How do you answer him?
absolutely. I said, I am paid a lot of money to have big ideas to change companies, to make them bigger, more successful. What I do now is I have a framework that enables leaders to do that themselves. Simple
So,
as that.
so what did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were at career day, what was your dream gig?
Actually, I never had one,
Okay.
to be fair, but I'm going to tell you a story. When I was 12, I was a terrible student. Wait, I've always been a terrible student, but particularly when I was 12, I was a terrible student because I was always bored in school. And one day we had this project to do, and it was to create a print ad. You had to pick a product, have an idea, write a headline, draw a picture. And I think it was the first project or piece of homework that I ever did voluntarily. And I worked all weekend on it. I absolutely loved this. And I was like, this is what I want to go and do the rest of my life. So Monday comes around, which I'm actually excited about for a change. And I go to the teacher and I said, this is what I want to do. And she said to me, she said, oh, you've got to pick something else because you'll never get into advertising. It's like one of the hardest things in the world to get into. So sadly, I believed her. She's an adult, and you know, you at that age, you kind of respect what adults think, and you don't question it, right? So I actually spent 15 years doing everything else, but I washed windows on skyscrapers. I was a chef. I was a maitre d' in a Michelin star restaurant. I cleaned kitchens. I did all sorts of different jobs, and it took me 15 years to get to back to being sort of into advertising, which I did for about 25 years as a creative director. So that's kind of my journey. I never wanted to be a doctor. I never wanted to
Yeah.
be anything like a fireman or any of those kind of things.
Do you ever think if she would have said yes, how your life would have been different? Or are you okay with the fact that this narrative is played out that way?
50-50, I think,
Okay.
is the answer to that one. And the reason why I'm not blisteringly mad about it is the experience of doing, 10, 12 careers really allowed me in my career as a creative in an ad. You're trying to solve a business problem with creativity. And in order to do that, you really have to understand the customer, the consumer. And doing so many different jobs gives you that experience, um, like a wider perspective on the world to actually be able to have empathy and put yourselves in somebody else's shoes. So it's a little bit of, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But
Yeah,
yeah, it would be very different because I only started, studying when I was 27. So that's kind of behind. Everybody else I was in ad school was like 18, 19, sometimes 17.
yeah, for sure.
So it's different.
Yeah. So where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Cape Town in South Africa.
Okay.
But I've lived in LA. It's the 13th city I've lived in my life. So kind of born and raised everywhere. I'm a little bit of a sidewalk special, as they say. That's why my accent is so weird.
Yeah, well, take me back to the roots and how you
Yeah.
got these seeds that have become your success of you helping
Yeah.
companies. How did this happen?
Well, between the time of no, you can't do that, as a career, I was about 15 years old and I discovered Fast Company. My dad left them lying around, and I started reading Fast Company like in bed before I went to sleep. And I was just fascinated by ideas that are really change businesses. That was the beginning of Fast Company. It really was about innovation in business, and it just lit me up. I thought this was the coolest thing in the world, and it got to the point where I actually had to ban myself from reading them before bed because I couldn't sleep because I was so excited about, like, I'm 15 years old. How do I get into the business world so I can, have ideas that change that? So kind of that was the second, I should say, foundation of what I've been doing for the rest of my life. Obviously, the first part of it was through advertising, creating actual ads and campaigns and brand positionings and all those things. And then I became a CMO, which is helping companies. And now I do that on a small consulting basis. So people go, "Hey, we've got good growth, but we don't lead the category. We don't do this. Like, how do we be disruptive?" Really old word, I know, but it's kind of true, right? So yeah, so that's kind of how it happened. And I just, ideas are the most powerful force in business.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that can create the biggest change. Like you can either work harder, which you're probably doing already. You can add more headcount, which is really expensive, or you can, just try new technologies and all those kind of things, which kind of helps, but it doesn't actually change where the business is going. It just optimizes rather than revolutionizes.
So who's been your hero, your muse, that inspirational force that's allowed you to navigate to this place
Hmm.
where you found your true
Yeah.
professional calling?
I think when I was younger, Richard Branson, now
Yeah.
Sir Richard Branson, I think he was living proof of that. Um, I also liked his, never didn't finish high school kind of part of it. As I said, I've never been a good student. Yes, I went to college and all those kind of things, but to me, it's really about creating a vision, like, and going, hey, how else can you do this? Why is it done this way? I think that's much more interesting to me than here's the theory of relativity for business growth, kind of whatever the thing is. So it really is about like going from not just good to great, but great to brilliant is really that's what I'm passionate about and helping others get there.
So
Yeah,
you mentioned Richard, and I may know the answer to this question, but if you could
yeah,
sit down with a wonderful business mind, have a
yeah,
lunch, talk to them that might help you on your journey, who would you love to
yeah.
meet and talk to?
Ooh, there's so many different people kind of stuck into one. I think it would I think it would be Sir Richard Branson.
Yeah.
What I appreciate about him is, like, he started in the 70s. He's been disrupting since then, and obviously now he's a little quieter than he used to be, but he's still going. He's still pushing. He's still backing companies and helping people lift the blinkers on the category. And I think that's he's also got a pretty cool island in middle of nowhere. I'd like to go to Necker Island, so that'd be cool.
Yeah, for sure. So, what is the motivation for you to do this work you're doing? You're affecting companies and people's lives. You have a soul. What is that collective energy for every day for you to do this at a high level?
A couple of things. I think I do Backward Brilliance, this kind of framework that I created from the way I used to create ideas that people can apply to their lives and to business, right? I do that in a couple of ways. One is keynote speaking, one is workshops, one is one-on-one consulting, like one-on-one training, coaching. And then the other one is more like, hey, being brought into a company to change the culture into a culture of more innovation. And I think the thing that makes me do it the most is like when you're giving a keynote, whether it's in a conference or you get brought into a company to inspire people, seeing the lights go on about this idea, this that ideas are just the most limitless, powerful thing is the coolest thing. You know, as a creative leader for 25 years, my job was to help creatives get better and better and better, right? It's you as the boss, your job is to make your creative people deliver and understand ideas better and better and better. And seeing people grow and stretch and just creating just phenomenal solutions to business problems is probably the most satisfying thing that I've ever done. And it's way more satisfying than having the idea myself. I think that's the thing that kind of really excites me. You know, people say, of the different parts of your business, what do you love the most? And for me, the keynote speaking is the thing I love the most. And then the one-on-one coaching, because you see the lights come on, you see somebody's not just career and what they're doing in their job or a company, but how it affects their lives as well. It's cool.
So, being a keynote speaker, you obviously know the power of moving a room. What's one of the
Yes.
best speeches you've ever witnessed in your life?
I think there are two answers to that. One is the Sir Ken Robinson on TED Talks. I mean, he's a master communicator. I love his whole take on education that it actually stunts power in kids and that kind of stuff, and how broken it is to create really, forward thinking and useful individuals as opposed to bots, as the kids say.
Yeah.
I would say that's one. And then the other one is years ago, when I worked at an agency called DDB, which is no longer around. One of the founders, Keith Reinhardt, he gave this speech. He was in his 80s at the time. Um, it was a creative director training conference that we went to, and he gave this speech about creativity. And during the speech, he just had a stool, no PowerPoint, no nothing, and he spellbound the room. But in the middle of the speech, he kind of took a step backwards and stumbled, and then like on the stool, like he was going to trip over and sat on it. Um, and you had this moment of empathy for him, like, oh, like Keith, don't fall over, because he was such a wonderful human being. The speech was incredible. What happened afterwards, we were doing an exercise, and on the stage, he'd left his script there, like the one he hadn't used. It's just his kind of pre-note script, and something caught my eye and on that script, in black letters, said, "Take half a step backwards and hit the stool and spit and almost stumble and sit there." So it was created this moment of like this person who you really respected and was so like appreciative that he came to talk to you. Like he actually generated this moment of care and empathy for him. Like he created how you felt about it. I just thought it was the wildest thing
Yeah.
I'd ever seen. If I'd never seen that piece of paper, it would have been a great speech, but because it went from I knew that, it just went from here to off the charts.
Yeah.
It was just such a cool moment in
That
life.
is cool. So I
Yeah.
gotta know, when you finally got into advertising after all that
Yeah.
time, what was your first project? What was one of the early seminal projects that you worked on?
So one of the things I worked on in was a billboard, and was for a headache tablet. And in South Africa, there's a brand called Grandpa headache tablet, and it was actually a powder in those days. It was
Yeah.
before like kind of in pills, and you put it in water and you drank it. It was disgusting. So I had to do a billboard, and billboards are probably the toughest thing as a creative to do, because you can't use more than 7 or 8 words,
Yeah.
right? You're driving down, it's like, so your idea has to be so succinct, so clear. Um, so what we did is we had this picture of the character, the grandpa, because he was a actual character. And on the billboard, he it was like a picture, but he was like wincing, And then we stuck a giant inflatable soccer ball like it had hit him in the head. And it says like, for when you need when grandpa needs a grandpa was the line. That was the very first project I ever did. But the one thing I will say, because it's a really great little segue, is finally I went to ad college and I was like going to live my dream, and I graduated ad college and I got to my first job and I really sucked at it. I really struggled. For the first 3 years, I thought I was going to be fired. Um, and like everything, every hardship in life, it can be a double-edged sword, right? So what it did is it set me on this journey to really understand how ideas were created. Um, I worked with a lot of people. I've worked with some of the best people in the world, like, the icons in advertising. And I just studied them and watched them and listened to them and what is the environment they created for great ideas. And if I hadn't sucked, I wouldn't have learned how to do this. And I never would be able to create the framework that I've created today, because most creators who are wildly more talented than I am, they just did it naturally. I didn't. So I was conscious of the steps. And so that's why that actually enabled me to create the framework that I can now share with anybody, like everybody and anybody, that allows them to have as good, if not better, ideas than I can have as a creative professional.
That's
So it
such a
was an interesting way of looking at it, right?
Yeah, well, it's a paramount idea. I have a jazz radio show, and Charlie
Yep,
Parker in the early days playing in Kansas City
that's
was
right.
really bad, and the
Yep.
drummer stood up and threw the cymbal, and it
Mhm.
crashed on the ground, and that was kind of the universal sign for you're
Yep.
done. And that just made him woodshed and figured out
Yep.
what he was doing, and he became
Yep.
the best ever on that instrument.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
sometimes we literally have to stumble to find
Yeah.
out why we love what we love, and then figure
Yeah.
it out from there. So when the big word retirement comes up in your head, what do you think
Yeah.
about? How does that word factor for you?
Oh, I think about projects. I
Yeah.
think about working actually. What am I going to come up with next? What are we going to do? How am I going to help others? I see retirement as the opportunity to do the thing that you love most of the time, as opposed to, right now with the business, 30% of the time is prospecting for new clients. 30% of the time is, getting invoicing and doing your books and all those kind of things, right? Retirement is 100% of the thing that you love to do for me. And you can give it away for free, like, do keynotes for college kids, or you know help the youth and next generation. And I think especially with AI, right, it's a lot of people ask me, it's like, oh, people don't need to have ideas with AI. And I'm like, well, actually it's the opposite. AI is the coolest thing in the whole wide world. It's also the biggest opportunity, because most people are going to go, hey, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, whoever, give me 10 ideas for this.
Yep.
All those ideas are a synthesis of ideas that have happened already.
Yeah.
Now you've got this opportunity, and it's kind of like the gold rush. If you understand ideas, you can elevate yourself 10, 20, 30%, 30 times better than everybody else in the market, the people you're competing with. So ideas are actually more important now with AI, than they've ever been. If you want to crush it, right? If you really want to be a leader in your space, you want to, like, so it's cool how ideas are just they're evergreen, they're forever, right?
Yeah.
And the people with the best ideas win,
Yeah.
right? Whether you like it or not, like you think Jeff Bezos has too much money, he encouraged great ideas, right? Amazon Prime, when the person who came up with the idea brought in Amazon Prime, they didn't believe the numbers that he presented because they were so wildly good. They actually made him go away, him or her, I don't know who it was, but they actually made the person go away and rerun the numbers when they had this idea, right? And you think about Prime, we all use Prime, right?
Yeah.
It's reset the standard. So you can love it or hate it, like, it's crushing small businesses and all that kind of, that's a separate discussion, right? But the idea is what made it what it is.
Yep. For sure. So, well, at the end of I'm curious if you had a dream tonight, ran in to the 18-year-old version of you ready to change the world,
Yeah.
and there was a film projector in the room and you click play and a highlight reel of your life came up. 60-second
Mhm.
highlight reel. Does that young version of you believe your life turned out this way?
I think yes. I always wanted to be, as I said, like when I was 15, I always wanted to get in. I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to finish high school. I just wanted to go and have ideas. And I've been incredibly fortunate to be paid a lot of money to have like great ideas. Like people who have, innovators get paid a lot. So yeah, I can, what's cool about it is yes, I was in advertising for 25 years, and then I was kind of over that. But then I was like, okay, so how do I translate that? Somebody asked me the other day. They said, "What's your dream job?" Dream job, and my dream job still to this day. Put me in a company, doesn't matter what size it is, and ask me to have ideas to make the company more relevant with its customers. Lock me in a room, happy as Larry. Just have ideas of how to make your company more like resonate more with your audience. And that's why people, spend money with you. That's why they continue to buy from you as a company, right? Because you understand me. Like is the think about all the companies you love. You just go, yeah, that I'm connected with them. I feel good about them, right?
Yeah.
That would be my dream job, even today.
Yeah. So on that 60-second highlight reel, what are you the proudest of?
Oh, I think first and foremost would be the team members that I've had the pleasure and honor of working with. I think the team members, my team members, that I've seen them go on to like incredible careers. Just so proud of them and proud to have helped in some way, hopefully. Um, I think the results, it's one thing to do like, hey, you do your job, but when you look back and it's like billions and billions and billions of additional revenue. Um, Many years ago, I had the honor of being a part of a three-person team that was tasked with rebranding Canada, the country,
Yeah.
which not many people can say, hey, like I've repositioned the country. And you think about like just the country moving from like the fifth most, desired destination to the third. You think about how many jobs, how much revenue, how much goodness that created for a country, let alone for a company, right?
Yeah.
It is a company, right? You look at it as it's the same thing, but it affects billions and millions of people, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. So at the end of the day, Will, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends,
Yeah.
clients, colleagues, but you run the show. You run what we see. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think just curious is the big thing, and always looking for how do you do something better. I think that's the thing is like, I think living is really important, right? I'm one of those people who loves to work. And when I'm between gigs or like, as a downtime, it kind of drives me crazy. So it's just somebody who loves to work. I love life. I love being, my family's great. I love my wife and I, since the day we met, work out together every single day. Love being healthy. Yeah, just, I think that's the answer. I
Yeah,
don't think about that too much.
it's a great
I think
answer.
it's a good question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So backwardbrilliance.com, is that the best place to go if anybody wants to dig in further?
That's the best place to go. Yes.
Okay.
That and in there you can see the different ways, different services, different ways of working. Um, yeah, I do it all, but it's all just about how do you go from good to great to brilliant is
Yeah.
the point. The point. Individuals, as I said, like companies, individuals doesn't matter. Um, I just love sharing that framework to empower people to be amazing.
Love it. I will put the link in the show notes. Will, this has been a joy. Thank you, sir. Great to meet
Thank
you.
you, Joe.
Continued
You
success.
too.
I appreciate it.